Yeah, that's very, very kind of you. It is a little bit early in the morning for singing, I'll just say that. A little bit of my humanity coming through there in a couple of notes, but thank you for receiving the spirit of what I'm giving. Yeah, thank you. I'm normally not awake for another hour, so this is anytime somebody says, "Oh, that's great, you're doing a concert on Saturday night. Do you want to come share a message with us on Sunday morning?" I'm like, how about we do it right after the concert at like 1 in the morning? That'd be a great time of day for me personally. That would be a great time for a service. But I know that I am nocturnal by nature. It's probably why I chose this profession. But I am not an academically trained minister or theologian. I got a degree in singing, and one may ask, why does that qualify me to stand here and share some message of life with you? But the truth of the matter is, were I not singing, I probably would have stuck with the idea of going to seminary. I would have become a minister. And it is an extraordinary blessing in my life that congregations like this one are willing to recognize ministry even when it is not overtly ordained. So thank you for this opportunity. This could be one of the shortest sermons you've ever heard. Might not be, but the topic is forgiveness. And, you know, I'm ethnically Swedish and French-Canadian and half Irish. And mostly what that says is that I'm going to live a long time and hold a lot of grudges. So the idea of speaking about forgiveness is as much about an ongoing practice for myself as it is for any of you. I do not present myself as an authority, but merely one who has spent thus far a lifetime trying to deconstruct some of the patterns that I was raised with culturally. A pair of readers has been a concession in my life since I saw you last 18 months ago, making my peace with middle age as it creeps up on me. The more I thought about what I wanted to share with you, the more I thought about the idea of forgiveness, the more I recognized that I had in fact put a lot of thought into this over the years. Began in childhood with a prayer that we said every Sunday, a prayer that we said at other times of the week, a prayer that unites fundamentalist Christians and metaphysical Christians, a prayer that unites Catholics and Lutherans and those of Christian Science. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. I like the word trespass. A lot of interpretation. A lot of folks say, forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. It's awfully businesslike. I don't think it really sums up what we're talking about here. Forgiveness is an act of redemption, a personal act of redemption. Forgiveness of the self, forgiveness of a spouse or partner, a child or parent. Forgiveness of family, friends, community, of institutions. All of these things are acts of redemption and reconciliation. The work of forgiveness is not the end of the journey of healing, but rather the beginning of it. And what follows is not magically perfect, like in the movies. There was not a single moment of catharsis after which everything is fine. Like love, forgiveness is a verb. It requires ongoing action and ongoing practice. A traditional Christian view of redemption views all of us as only able to access true redemption as a result of the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus. And if Jesus practiced radical love, he also practiced radical forgiveness. In fact, it was that very radical forgiveness that paved the way for radical love. Are we capable of any less? To conveniently lay the ultimate power of forgiveness at the foot of the cross is to let ourselves off the hook for living the best lives we can live. To presume that only God can offer true forgiveness is a way of giving ourselves a pass for not knowing how to forgive. But just because we don't know how to do it yet does not mean that we are not capable of the same radical love that Jesus showed to others. We have at our fingertips the capacity to manifest miracles in this world, miracles of often hidden but profound impact. We can be for each other the healing power of redemption, manifest through our willingness to love radically and to forgive with equal measure. But it is a choice. We are redemption for each other if we are willing to be so. The Gospels say, whatever you set loose on earth, it shall be loosed in heaven. And whatever you hold bound on earth, it will be bound in heaven. I think that idea is often interpreted to mean how we feel about other people. If we believe they have wronged us and we hold something here that somehow there will be some eternal judgment of them. The older I get, the more I realize that I think that piece of Scripture is talking to us about the burdens we hold in our own heart. They say you can't take it with you. But the Buddhists talk about karma and reincarnation and the fact that the choices we make here and what we do carry with us spiritually does affect our lives down the road. Catholics have all kinds of ideas about this. Most religions of the world do have some idea of an afterlife and some idea that afterlife is determined by the choices we make here. So, well, you can't take it with you may apply to a boat or a car or a favorite pair of shoes. Unfortunately, the things that we carry in our heart do seem to travel with us. Enough religions of the world have come to the same consensus that I have to believe that there's some truth in that idea, that a spiritual illness will travel with us, and that spiritual healing will radiate outward and also travel with us. What does a proper apology look like? I think that's where forgiveness begins. We talk about the science of our spirituality, that there is a knowing, that there are knowable principles in the idea of spirituality. It isn't all just voodoo and magic. I think there's a lot of truth in this. The wisdom of 12-step communities suggests that you should only make amends when to do so will not cause additional harm to others or to ourselves. I think offering an apology requires some thought. It should not just be something we throw out there to make the peace or because we're afraid of conflict. An insincere apology can in fact cause more harm. From experience, I can say that if you're ready to offer an honest apology, you should be prepared next to receive the anger of another person for whatever harm you may have caused. The anger may not come, but there's a real possibility that it will at some point emerge. Be prepared for that. Be ready to practice nonviolence in your response. Be ready to be blamed for more than you understand yourself to have done. And be ready to respond with radical love and humility. They may be right. You may not be seeing the whole picture. Next, be willing to ask them, what would fix this? What would repair the damage that I have caused? How would you know that things were better or different or on a path of actual healing? How would you measure that? It's interesting. Once we have diffused someone's anger, that discernment process really does need to be a two-way street. How do we measure healing? How do we measure the growth or the change in the dynamic? We have to be willing to consider those things. And having considered them, actually do some or all of them as befits our own ability and understanding of the situation. What does this look like from the side of offering forgiveness? Be ready for your own anger when someone else apologizes. Be ready to be honest but kind. Do not let your own anger dominate a genuine attempt at reconciliation. You can level with someone without leveling them. It's an important idea. If you are not ready to offer forgiveness yet, don't fake it. Say something like, "Thank you for your words and for your awareness. Can we talk about this more after I've had a chance to gently reflect on your apology?" Honor the courage that it took for someone to come to you and apologize. But if you're honestly not ready to forgive, don't fake it. If you are in an ongoing conflict, be prepared to let someone know that you still feel harmed by their words or actions. But consider how you have been harmed. Perhaps practice with a friend, a trusted friend, what you want to say so that you can be firm but kind. And be prepared for the possibility that someone whom you believe owes you an apology may not see it the same way. If they offer an honest apology, let that be the first step in a longer conversation about how to avoid the same conflict in the future. You must have thought about this beforehand so that you have suggestions or ideas about what would help avoid conflict in the future. And be prepared to actually forgive. Practice. Pray about it. Meditate on offering forgiveness. Then actually do it. Let's practice saying these 3 words. I forgive you. Say it one more time, slowly, and let it wash over you. I forgive you. We can practice saying, "Dear self, I forgive you. I forgive you that double bacon cheeseburger you had last night that will cause me an extra 3 days in the gym just to get back to where I was before you had that double bacon cheeseburger. Dear beloved, I forgive you for the unkind thing that you said to me. Dear sister or brother, I forgive you. Dear church, I forgive you for being human and having failings. Dear neighbor, I forgive you for letting your dog poop on my lawn. What's the opposite? Dear self, I'm really sorry for that double bacon cheeseburger. It tasted good, but I know it didn't help us get where we were going. Dear beloved, I'm sorry that I didn't notice how hard you worked to create a beautiful space for us. Dear sister, dear brother, I'm sorry for the ways that I seem to still be holding on to things from the past. Dear church, I'm sorry for the ways I have expected you to do the work without being willing to meet you halfway. Dear neighbor, I'm sorry I was grumpy, but please don't let your dog poop on my lawn. Forgiveness is necessity in our lives. And forgiveness is particularly important because I think we come to this sometimes with the idea that it's all about what's out here. But if I am holding the stone of that anger in my heart and in my gut, it is an act of personal redemption to decide to lay that burden down It is up to me to do that. The person whom I believe has harmed me may never be able to come to a place where they recognize the harm that they have caused. That harm may be real, and they may simply be incapable of recognizing it. We cannot hinge our own happiness, our own healing, our own sense of wellness, our own sense of completion based on another person's ability or inability to recognize a dynamic. That's up to us. We have to choose to forgive. We have to practice with it. We have to love that stone of frustration into sand. We have to wear it down with the power of our love. And when we offer an apology, it does not matter if another person even understands that we have caused them harm. Or maybe they're so angry with us they don't want to hear or are unable to hear an honest apology. But we are still carrying the burden of that guilt, of that moment of difficulty in our own lives. And I pray for myself and every one of you that none of us are ever judged on the most difficult moments of our lives, but on the best ones. And so if we have one of those difficult moments and we have responded to the world in a way or to a person in a way that is not about promoting the wellness of community, the wellness of relationship, the totality of healing, that's a burden we have to let go of as well. And making an honest apology is part of how we get there, even if another person is not yet ready to meet us there. Both of my parents died when I was younger, and I had a fair amount of work to do posthumously with both of them. I discovered this idea of forgiveness and release and humble apology works even with those who are no longer corporeal to this incarnation, those that are not here. We can still find reconciliation because we're the ones holding on to the stuff. I just had a memory come back to me in the last year that I'm still chagrined about, where I was incredibly unkind to my father. I was about 12. It happens. But he died when I was 19. And I woke up a year ago and went, oh my God, I was being really snotty to my old man, and he was such a kind fellow. Like, you know, I suppose by the time he got to me, I'm the youngest of 7 children. I think he just went, he's 12. He was pretty well practiced, and he was a Korean War veteran, so I'm guessing that it took a fair amount for the tea to spill over the edge of the cup in his life. You know, but I suddenly came to an awareness of how unkind I had been to him. And I felt very guilty about that. I was raised Catholic. I do guilt well. And I sat with it, and I meditated with it, and I said, okay, I need to just make an honest apology to him, because I'm pretty sure he's gotten over it. And yet here I am still hanging on to it. So I think it's important to wrap our head around why an apology, why forgiveness is relevant. It isn't just about the outcome. It's about the process. It's about opening our own hearts. And from that place, healing can occur. These 2 Buddhist monks are walking. They're headed from one monastery to another. It's a bit of a distance, a couple of days' travel. And they come to a stream. And there's a young woman who's there, and she is absolutely distraught. She doesn't know how to swim. There's been a lot of rains of late. The water has risen. She can't cross the stream. And she desperately needs to bring news to family in a neighboring village about a death in the family. And there are these 2 monks traveling together, an older monk and a younger monk. Unbeknownst to the younger monk, the older monk, actually about once every 7 to 10 years, goes back and runs through a class of novitiates anonymously, just to remember what the teachings look like the first time around, to remember what it's like to experience this knowledge for the first time. Many of you go through this with parenting, where you look at the world through the eyes of your children and you see again, for the first time, what the world looks like. The younger monk doesn't know this. So the older monk picks up the woman, sets her on his shoulders, and walks across the stream, sets her down, and she thanks him profusely and takes off running to the village. For 2 miles, the younger monk is steaming. It's just sweating off of him. They're walking in silence, but you can just feel the tension. And finally, the elder monk says, "Brother, do you have something to say?" And the younger monk just erupts. Says, "The tenets of our order are very specific. We are not to have any physical contact with women for any reason. And you picked up a woman and put her on your shoulders and carried her across." The elder monk said, "I left the woman by the river. Why are you still carrying her?" Dorothy Day, the founder of the Catholic worker movement, one of the great religious radicals of the 20th century. There was talk of her canonization before she died, and she said, "Do not make me a saint. Do not let them do it to me. To do so suggests that I have done something beyond the capacity of other human beings, and I have not. All I have done is love radically." We are all capable of that. I want to read you a passage from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King from a sermon that he gave on Christmas morning in 1957 at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Let us move now from the practical how to the theoretical why. Why should we love our enemies? The first reason is fairly obvious. Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Hate multiplies hate. Violence multiplies violence. And toughness multiplies toughness in a descending spiral of destruction. So when Jesus says, "Love your enemies," he is setting forth a profound and ultimately inescapable admonition. We have not come to such an impasse in the modern world that we must love our enemies or else. The chain reaction of evil hate begetting hate, wars producing more wars, must be broken, or we will be plunged into the dark abyss of annihilation. Another reason why we must love our enemies is that hate scars the soul and distorts the personality. Mindful that hate is an evil and dangerous force, we too often think of what it does to the person hated. This is understandable, for hate brings irreparable damage to its victims. We have seen its ugly consequence in the ignominious deaths brought to 6 million Jews by a hate-obsessed madman named Hitler, in the unspeakable violence inflicted upon Negroes by bloodthirsty mobs, in the dark horrors of war, and in the terrible indignities and injustices perpetrated against millions of God's children by unconscionable oppressors. But there is another side which we must never overlook. Hate is just as injurious to the person who hates. Like an unchecked cancer, hate corrodes the personality and eats away its vital unity. Hate destroys a person's sense of values and objectivity. It causes one to describe the beautiful as ugly and the ugly as beautiful, and to confuse the true with the false and the false with the true. A third reason why we must and should love our enemies is that love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. We never get rid of an enemy by meeting hate with hate. We get rid of an enemy by getting rid of enmity. By its very nature, hate destroys and tears down. By its very nature, love creates and builds up. Love transforms with redemptive power. And hate is a chain with a prisoner at both ends. So often, we do not forgive because we're afraid. We are afraid. But the poet Maya Angelou said something very powerful, very beautiful. We do the best we can with what we know. But once we know better, do better. A very powerful idea when it comes to forgiveness. We are all capable of it. It requires humility. It requires a willingness to recognize where we may have wronged another. It requires not a surrender of our sovereignty, but a surrender of our ego in its destructive forms. And we don't get there overnight. We practice that. We practice that day in and day out with little things so that when we come to the bigger things, we have some idea how to approach them. But forgiveness is an extraordinary healing power in the world, and one that sits in the palm of the hand of every person in this room, every person in the world. Forgiveness is real. Forgiveness is possible. Reconciliation is possible. And inside that hope, I wish you a beautiful week ahead, and thank you for letting me share some of my thoughts with you.